The massive space station floating in the dark void looked like a metal city. Thousands of ships moved around it like busy insects. Admiral Kextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the daily patrol routes with satisfaction. His golden scales caught the light from the control panels as he nodded to his officers. For over 1,000 years, the Zephyrian Empire had ruled this part of the galaxy. Their blue and silver warships were feared across dozens of star systems. No enemy had ever challenged their power and lived to tell about it. Kextar had been an admiral for 30 years, and he had never lost a battle. "Sir, all patrol groups are reporting normal status," said his communications officer. The young Zephyrian's voice carried the confidence that came from serving the strongest military force in known space. "Good. Keep them sharp," Kextar replied. He walked to the large window that showed the stars beyond. "The outer colonies have been quiet lately. Too quiet." His tactical officer, a veteran named Zorvik, approached with a data pad. "Admiral, the monthly tribute ships from the Kepler system arrived this morning. The humans there are behind schedule again." Kextar's eyes narrowed. Humans were one of the newer species they had conquered, barely 50 years ago. They lived on several small worlds at the edge of Imperial space. Most were farmers or miners, useful but not particularly advanced. Their technology was primitive compared to Zephyrian engineering. "Double their tribute next month," Kextar said. "Primitive species need firm guidance." Suddenly, every alarm on the bridge started screaming at once. Red lights flashed across all the control panels. Officers rushed to their stations as emergency protocols kicked in. "Report!" Kextar shouted over the noise. "Sir, massive energy surge detected at grid reference 779, the sensor officer called out. His voice cracked with fear. "The readings are off our charts." "Impossible. Run a system diagnostic." "Already done, sir. All sensors are working perfectly. The energy levels are real." On the main display screen, space itself seemed to be twisting. A dark crack appeared in the void, growing larger by the second. Strange blue lightning danced around the edges of the tear in reality. "What in the name of the ancestors is that?" Zorvictor whispered. The crack widened until it was several kilometers across. Through the opening, they could see swirling colors and impossible geometry that hurt to look at directly. Then something started coming through. First came the nose of a ship, but it was unlike anything in the Imperial database. The hull was dark gray with sharp angles that looked aggressive even at rest. As more of the vessel emerged, its true size became clear. It was massive, easily as large as their biggest battleships. "Get me a tactical analysis now," Kextar ordered. "Sir, the ship's design is completely unknown. The hull material is not in our database. Power readings are." The officer paused, checking his instruments again. "Sir, this cannot be correct." "What are the readings?" "The power output from that single vessel equals our entire battle fleet combined." Kextar felt his blood run cold. In 1,000 years of conquest, they had never encountered anything like this. The mysterious ship finished emerging from the spatial tear, which immediately closed behind it. The vessel hung in space, dark and silent. Inside the human ship UNS Defiance, Captain Jake Morrison stood calmly on his bridge. His brown hair was starting to show gray at the temples after 20 years in the United Earth Navy. He wore a simple blue uniform with captain stripes on his shoulders. "Fold jump complete, sir," reported his navigation officer. "But we're not where we're supposed to be." Morrison nodded and looked at the main screen. Instead of empty space, they were surrounded by dozens of alien warships. Their designs were sleek and advanced, with blue energy fields around their hulls. "Well, this is interesting," Morrison said quietly. "Amy, what do you make of those ships?" Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, his tactical officer, was already scanning the alien vessels. She was a small woman with quick eyes and steady hands. "Unknown design, sir. They appear to be military vessels. Energy weapons, missile systems, advanced shields. Definitely not friendly. Any response to our standard greeting?" Communications Officer Lieutenant Chris Parker shook his head. "Nothing, sir. I'm broadcasting on all standard frequencies, but they're not responding." "Wait, I'm getting something now. A harsh alien voice filled the bridge, speaking in a language none of them recognized. The tone was clearly demanding. Can the computer translate? Morrison asked. Working on it, sir. The language is completely unknown, but I'm picking up repeated words. I think they're demanding we identify ourselves. Commander Ben Sullivan, the chief engineer, looked up from his console. He was a big man with oil stains on his uniform from working in the engine room. Captain, those ships are moving into attack formation. And sir, there are a lot of them. Morrison counted at least 50 vessels surrounding his ship. The aliens had moved with military precision, creating a perfect sphere around the Defiance. It was clearly a hostile formation. Options. Morrison asked his officers. We could try to run, Rodriguez suggested. The full drive is recharged. That would look like guilt, Morrison replied. Besides, we came here to explore, not to start a fight. Parker suddenly straightened. Sir, I'm getting a translation matrix. Basic concepts are coming through. They're demanding we surrender and prepare to be boarded. Morrison considered this. Humanity had spent the last 200 years preparing for this moment, first contact with alien life. They had protocols and procedures. But none of those procedures covered being surrounded by hostile warships. Send a response. Tell them we come in peace and want to talk. Sent, sir. But I don't think they're interested in talking. On the alien flagship, Admiral Kextar was reading the human response with growing anger. The unknown ship claimed to be explorers, but it had appeared using technology beyond Imperial understanding. No one traveled through folded space except in the old legends. They mock us with lies, he said to his officers. Explorers do not need such massive ships or unknown weapons. Orders, sir? Asked Zor Victor. Kextar studied the human vessel. It was alone against his entire fleet. Whatever species had built it, they were either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Fire a warning shot across their bow. Disable their engines. We will board them and learn their secrets. The Imperial ships opened fire. Brilliant blue energy beams lanced across space toward the human vessel. The weapons were designed to disable enemy ships without destroying them completely. They had never failed to stop an enemy vessel. The energy beams struck the Defiance's shields and simply disappeared. The human ship did not even shake from the impact. Morrison watched the alien weapons hit his shields with mild interest. Well, that was rude. Ben, did they even scratch our paint? Sullivan checked his readings. No, sir. Shield strength is still at 100%. Those weapons barely registered on our sensors. They might think we didn't notice. Try hailing them again. But Admiral Kextar was beyond communication. He stared at his tactical display in shock. His weapons had done absolutely nothing to the human ship. The readings showed the alien vessel shields had absorbed energy that should have crippled any known starship. Impossible, he whispered. Nothing can withstand our weapons. Sir, his sensor officer called out, the alien ship is hailing us again. Ignore it. All ships, prepare for full attack. Maximum firepower. Morrison sighed as he watched more alien ships move into position. Their intentions were clear now. Well, gentlemen, it looks like our peaceful first contact just went sideways. Amy, bring weapons online. Weapons ready, sir. But are we really going to fight them? Morrison looked at the dozens of alien ships preparing to attack his vessel. He thought about the families back on Earth, about the colonies that depended on ships like his for protection. Humanity had learned hard lessons about the price of weakness. We came here in peace, he said quietly. But we're not helpless. If they want a fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget. Admiral Kextar watched his fleet move into perfect attack formation. 53 warships surrounded the human vessel like predators circling wounded prey. Each ship was a masterpiece of Zephyrian engineering, armed with weapons that had conquered dozens of worlds. All ships report ready, Admiral, Zor Victor announced. His voice carried the confidence of certain victory. Kextar nodded slowly. He had seen this scene many times before. A lone enemy ship, outnumbered and outgunned, facing the might of the Imperial fleet. The outcome was always the same. The enemy would surrender or be destroyed. "Target their engines and weapon systems," he commanded. "I want them alive for questioning. Begin the attack." Space erupted in brilliant light as 53 warships opened fire at once. Blue energy beams and glowing missiles streaked toward the human ship from every direction. The coordinated assault was beautiful in its deadly precision. On the Defiance, Lieutenant Rodriguez watched the incoming fire with professional interest. Multiple contacts inbound. Energy weapons and kinetic missiles. Time to impact, 12 seconds. Captain Morrison stood calmly in the center of his bridge. He had fought in 3 wars and countless smaller battles. The sight of incoming enemy fire no longer made his heart race. Point defense systems online. Let's see what they've got. The alien weapons reached the human ship and struck its shields like waves hitting a cliff. The energy beams scattered harmlessly across the barrier, creating brief flashes of light. The missiles exploded against the shields without leaving even a scratch. Commander Sullivan monitored the ship systems with growing amazement. "Captain, their weapons are barely registering on our sensors. It's like they're throwing rocks at a battleship." Morrison nodded. He had expected as much. Earth's military had developed their shields during the resource wars, when cities needed protection from orbital bombardment. The technology was designed to stop weapons far more advanced than what these aliens possessed. Admiral Kextar stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Every weapon in his fleet had struck the enemy ship, and it showed no damage at all. The readings indicated the human vessel shields had absorbed the entire attack without even weakening. "Impossible," he whispered. "Run another diagnostic on all weapon systems." "Already completed, sir. All weapons functioned perfectly. The enemy's defensive systems are beyond our understanding." Kextar felt fear creep into his mind for the first time in decades. In 1,000 years of conquest, the Empire had never encountered defensive technology this advanced. But he was an admiral of the Imperial fleet. Retreat was not an option. All ships, continuous fire. Concentrate on a single point. Their shields must have limits. The Imperial fleet poured everything they had into the human ship. Energy weapons fired without pause. Missiles launched in endless waves. The space around the Defiance became a storm of destructive force. Morrison watched the light show with growing concern. Not because his ship was in danger, but because the aliens were clearly desperate. Desperate enemies made poor decisions. "Amy, are they doing any damage at all?" Rodriguez checked her instruments. "No, sir. Shield strength is holding at 98%. The only reason it's not 100 is because I'm running diagnostics." "Chris, try hailing them again. Maybe we can talk sense into them." Parker worked at his console for several minutes. "No response, sir. I think they're too busy shooting at us to listen." Morrison sighed. He had hoped to avoid violence, but the aliens seemed determined to fight. Earth's first contact with alien life was turning into a disaster. "Ben, what's the status of our weapons?" Sullivan's expression grew serious. "All systems operational, sir. Plasma cannons are charged, missile tubes loaded, and the main gun is ready if you need it." Morrison considered his options. The Defiance carried enough firepower to level cities. It was designed as an exploration ship, but humanity had learned that explorers needed teeth in a dangerous universe. "Minimum necessary force," he decided. "Target their weapon systems only. Let's see if we can convince them to stop shooting." Rodriguez targeted the nearest alien warship with surgical precision. The Defiance's plasma cannon fired once, a brief flash of superheated energy that crossed the distance in less than a second. The Zephyrian cruiser's forward weapon arrays simply vanished. The plasma bolt had cut through their shields and armor like a hot knife through butter. The ship spun helplessly, its main guns destroyed but the crew compartments untouched. Aboard the flagship, every officer fell silent. They had just watched a single shot from the human ship disable one of their most powerful cruisers. The weapon that had done it was unlike anything in their database. "Analysis," Kextar demanded, his voice barely steady. "The alien weapon appears to be contained plasma, sir. Temperature readings exceed anything we've seen. Our shields provided no protection at all." Kextar looked at the tactical display. One of his ships was crippled, and the human vessel showed no signs of damage. His fleet was firing continuously, and they were accomplishing nothing. Morrison watched as more alien ships moved to attack positions. "I don't think they got the message, Amy. Disable 2 more ships. Maybe they'll see reason." The Defiance fired twice more. 2 alien cruisers lost their weapon systems in perfectly aimed shots. The human gunners were precise enough to disable enemy ships without killing their crews. Admiral Kextar finally understood what he was facing. The human ship was not just defending itself. It was demonstrating superior firepower while showing mercy to his crews. This was not the behavior of primitive aliens. "Sir," Zorvictor said quietly, "perhaps we should consider withdrawal." "Never," Kextar snapped. "The Empire does not retreat. All ships, ramming speed. If we cannot destroy them with weapons, we will crush them with our hulls." Morrison watched in horror as the alien ships began accelerating directly toward his vessel. "They're trying to ram us. These people are insane." "Orders, sir?" Rodriguez asked. Morrison felt anger building in his chest. He had tried diplomacy. He had shown restraint. But these aliens seemed determined to die rather than accept that they had met their match. "Change targets to their engines. Stop them before they can ram us." The Defiance's weapons fired rapidly now. Each shot was perfectly aimed to disable enemy engines without destroying the ships completely. Alien vessels lost power and drifted helplessly as their drive systems were surgically removed. But there were too many ships and not enough time. 3 Zephyrian cruisers broke through the defensive fire and closed to ramming distance. Morrison made a decision that would haunt him. "Ben, emergency power to forward shields. Brace for impact." The alien ships struck the Defiance at full speed. The collision should have destroyed both vessels in a ball of fire and twisted metal. Instead, the human ship's shields held firm. The Zephyrian cruisers crumpled against the barrier like insects hitting a windshield. Thousands of alien crew members died in the impact. Morrison watched the broken ships drift away and felt sick. He had not wanted this to happen. "Enough," he said quietly. "Amy, target the space station." "Sir." "You heard me. 1 shot. Make it count." Rodriguez targeted the massive space station that served as the aliens' command center. The Defiance's main gun charged with a sound like thunder. The weapon had never been fired in combat before. The beam that emerged from the human ship was as bright as a star. It struck the alien station and passed completely through it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the massive structure began to break apart, its internal systems destroyed by the energy that had passed through it. Admiral Kextar watched his command station die and finally understood. He was not facing primitive aliens. He was facing a species that had developed weapons of unimaginable power. "All ships, cease fire and withdraw," he ordered. His voice was hollow with defeat. "Sir." Zorvictor could not believe what he was hearing. "You heard me. Full retreat to the inner system. We need to report this to the High Command." As the surviving alien ships limped away, Morrison stood alone on his bridge. First contact with alien life had become a massacre. He had tried to be merciful, but the aliens had forced his hand. "Chris, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we've made contact with a hostile alien empire. And tell them we're going to need backup." The emergency meeting room on the Imperial capital world buzzed with nervous energy. High-ranking officials from across the Zephyrian Empire had gathered to discuss the disaster at the outer system. The holographic display at the center of the room showed the battle recordings over and over again. Dr. Velandra, the Empire's leading scientist, paused the recording at the moment the human ship fired its main weapon. The massive space station that had stood for 300 years was nothing but debris now. She turned to face the assembled officials with worried eyes. "Honorable Council members, what we witnessed was not just superior technology. It was a completely different approach to warfare," she said in her careful voice. General Morketh, a scarred veteran of dozens of campaigns, leaned forward in his chair. "Explain what you mean, Doctor." Velandra activated another display showing the technical analysis of the human weapons. Their plasma technology operates at temperatures we cannot achieve. Their shields absorb energy in ways our science cannot explain. But that is not the most troubling discovery. Then what is? Demanded Counselor Vexran, his golden scales flickering with anger. The precision, sir. Look at these recordings carefully. The human ship could have destroyed our entire fleet in the first minute of battle. Instead, it targeted specific systems. It disabled our ships without killing crews unnecessarily. The room fell silent as the officials studied the battle footage. It was true. The human weapons had struck with surgical accuracy, destroying engines and weapons while leaving crew compartments intact. General Morketh spoke slowly. They were holding back. Even when our ships tried to ram them, they only used enough force to stop the attack. Precisely, Vel-Andra confirmed. This suggests a military doctrine based on measured response rather than overwhelming destruction. They escalated their attacks only when we refused to stop fighting. Admiral Kextar entered the room, his uniform torn and his scales dulled with exhaustion. He had barely escaped the battle with his flagship intact. The other officials looked at him with a mixture of respect and fear. Admiral, tell us about this enemy, Counselor Vexran ordered. Kextar moved to the display and touched the image of the human ship. I have fought in 47 battles across 20 star systems. I have never encountered anything like this vessel. Their captain tried to communicate with us. We ignored him. He tried to warn us off. We attacked him. Only when we attempted to ram his ship did he show us his true power. You sound as if you admire them, General Morketh observed. I respect them, Kextar replied. Any warrior who shows mercy to defeated enemies deserves respect. But make no mistake, they are the most dangerous opponents we have ever faced. Dr. Vel-Andra activated a new display showing intercepted human communications. We managed to decode some of their transmissions during the battle. What we learned is disturbing. The recording played the voice of Captain Morrison speaking to his crew. Even through the translation system, his calm professionalism was evident. He gave orders to disable rather than destroy, to minimize casualties, to offer surrender terms. This is the voice of an experienced commander, Kextar said. Someone who has fought many battles but takes no pleasure in killing. Vel-Andra nodded. But there is more. Our analysis of their ship design reveals something extraordinary. Every system is built for efficiency and reliability. This is not the work of a species that developed in peace. She brought up detailed scans of the human vessel's hull and internal structure. Look at these design patterns. Redundant systems, modular construction, weapons that can be rapidly replaced or upgraded. This ship was built by engineers who expected it to take damage and keep fighting. What does that tell us about their species? Asked Counselor Vexran. It tells us they learned warfare through necessity, not conquest, Vel-Andra explained. These are the techniques of a species that fought for survival, not dominance. General Morketh studied the ship design with growing concern. How many ships like this do they have? Unknown, sir. But consider this, they sent a single vessel to explore unknown space. This suggests either supreme confidence or abundant resources. Possibly both. The room erupted in worried conversation. The implications were staggering. If the humans had many ships like the Defiance, they could challenge the Empire's control over entire sectors. Admiral Kextar raised his hand for silence. There is something else you need to know. During the battle, I monitored their internal communications. The captain called for backup from something called Earth Command. Earth. Vel-Andra repeated. That must be their home world. A single planet produced this technology? Counselor Vexran's voice cracked with disbelief. Kextar nodded grimly. And if they are calling for reinforcements, we may soon face more than one ship. Dr. Vel-Andra activated her personal datapad and began working rapidly. I need to analyze their communication patterns more deeply. There may be clues about their military structure and capabilities. Hours passed as the scientist worked through the intercepted transmissions. The other officials waited nervously, knowing that their decisions in the coming days would determine the Empire's fate. Finally, Vel-Andra looked up with pale eyes. Council members, I have troubling news. The human transmissions reference something called the United Earth Navy. This implies a unified military force from their entire planet. So they are already united, General Morketh mused. No internal conflicts to exploit. Worse than that, sir. Their historical references suggest they achieved this unity after centuries of devastating warfare. They learned to work together because the alternative was extinction. Counselor Vexran stood and paced around the room. What are you saying, Doctor? I am saying we face a species that survived by developing the most efficient military technology possible. Every system on their ship represents lessons learned through actual combat. They did not conquer other species to grow strong. They grew strong by nearly destroying themselves. The implications hung heavy in the air. The Zephyrian Empire had become dominant by crushing weaker species. They had never faced an enemy that developed superior technology through internal conflict. Admiral Kextar broke the silence. There is one more thing. At the end of the battle, when I ordered the retreat, the human ship did not pursue us. They could have destroyed my remaining vessels easily, but they let us go. Mercy again, General Morketh observed. Or strategy, Velandra suggested. They wanted survivors to carry news of their capabilities back to the Empire. They wanted us to know what we are facing. Counselor Vexran returned to his seat with a heavy sigh. What do you recommend, Admiral? Kextar considered carefully before answering. We have 3 options. We can mobilize the entire Imperial fleet for a massive assault. We can attempt diplomatic contact. Or we can abandon the outer sectors and hope they do not advance further into our territory. The Empire does not retreat, Vexran declared. Then we must choose between diplomacy and total war, Kextar replied. But understand this, if we choose war, we may not survive it. Dr. Velandra activated one final display showing the human ship's estimated firepower compared to Imperial vessels. The comparison was sobering. A single human warship matched the destructive capability of an entire Imperial battle group. Council members, she said quietly, we are no longer the strongest military force in the galaxy. For the first time in 1,000 years, we face an enemy who might be able to destroy us completely. The room fell silent as the officials contemplated the end of their empire's dominance. Outside the windows, the capital city sprawled under alien suns, unaware that everything was about to change. General Morketh finally spoke. How long before their reinforcements arrive? Unknown, sir. But we should prepare for the possibility that next time, we will not face just one ship. The council members looked at each other with growing dread. The empire that had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years was trembling, and they all knew it. Captain Morrison stood on the observation deck of the Defiance, watching the stars through the reinforced windows. 3 days had passed since the battle, and his ship remained alone in the outer system. The alien fleet had retreated to the inner planets and had not returned. Sir, we're receiving a transmission, Lieutenant Parker announced over the comm system. It's coming from the alien capital world. Morrison made his way back to the bridge, where his officers waited with curious expressions. The main screen showed an elderly alien with intricate golden scales and tired eyes. The universal translator had improved significantly since their first contact. Human vessel, I am Counselor Vexran of the Zephyrian Empire. I wish to speak with your commander. Morrison stepped forward. I am Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Navy. I'm listening, Counselor. The alien's expression was carefully neutral. Captain Morrison, we have studied the recent engagement between our forces. We acknowledge that mistakes were made on both sides. Mistakes. Morrison's voice carried a hint of steel. Your ships attacked my vessel without provocation. You tried to ram us when your weapons failed. Those weren't mistakes, Counselor. Those were acts of war. Vexran's scales dimmed slightly. You are correct, Captain. We acted with arrogance born from centuries of unchallenged dominance. We assumed you were primitive because we had never encountered your technology before. Morrison studied the alien leader carefully. The translator was working better now, and he could hear genuine remorse in the counselor's voice. But he had learned not to trust first impressions when dealing with alien cultures. What do you want, Counselor? To talk, Captain. To find a way forward that does not end in the destruction of either of our peoples. Morrison considered this. He had sent word to Earth Command 3 days ago, but reinforcements would not arrive for weeks. If the aliens wanted war, his single ship could not protect Earth's colonies in this sector. "I'm willing to listen," he said carefully. Dr. Velandra appeared beside the counselor on the screen. "Captain Morrison, may I ask about your ship's construction? Our analysis suggests design principles we do not understand." Morrison looked to his chief engineer. Commander Sullivan stepped forward with a slight smile. "What would you like to know, Doctor? Your power generation system operates beyond our theoretical limits. Your weapons achieve plasma temperatures we thought impossible. How is this possible?" Sullivan's expression grew serious. "Doctor, our technology developed out of necessity. For centuries, humans fought wars that could have destroyed our entire species. We learned to build things that could survive anything." "You fought yourselves?" Velandra asked with obvious confusion. "For thousands of years," Morrison confirmed. "We nearly wiped ourselves out multiple times. The technology on this ship represents everything we learned from those conflicts." On the alien capital world, the Imperial Council listened to this exchange with growing unease. A species that had nearly destroyed itself possessed weapons that could threaten their entire empire. Counselor Vexran spoke carefully. "Captain, we have ruled this part of the galaxy for 1,000 years. Our subjects depend on the stability we provide." "Your subjects or your slaves?" Morrison asked bluntly. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Vexran's scales shifted color slightly, a sign of emotional distress that the humans were learning to recognize. "We prefer the term protectorates, Captain. Call it whatever you want, Counselor. From what I've seen, you conquered dozens of species and forced them to serve your empire. That doesn't sound like protection to me." Lieutenant Rodriguez stepped beside Morrison. "Sir, I'm detecting massive fleet movements throughout the system. It looks like they're mobilizing everything they have." Admiral Kextar appeared on the screen beside the counselor. "Captain Morrison, please understand our position. News of your ship's capabilities has spread throughout the Empire. Some of our subject species are beginning to rebel, believing you will support their independence." Morrison felt a weight settle on his shoulders. He had come here as an explorer, but his actions were reshaping an entire galactic civilization. "Admiral, I never intended to start a revolution." "Perhaps not," Kextar replied. "But your mere presence has changed everything. The Empire's authority depends on our subjects believing we are invincible. You have proven that we are not." Dr. Campbell, the ship's medical officer, joined the conversation. She had been treating wounded prisoners from the battle and had insights the others lacked. "Captain, I've been working with survivors from their damaged ships. These people aren't evil. They're just following a system that's worked for them for centuries." Morrison nodded. Campbell always saw the humanity in their enemies, even when they weren't human. "Counselor, what exactly are you proposing?" Vexran exchanged glances with his advisors before answering. "A treaty, Captain. Recognition of boundaries and spheres of influence. We will not interfere with human expansion if you do not challenge our core territories." "And your subject species?" "Would remain under Imperial protection." Morrison felt anger building in his chest. They wanted him to ignore slavery just to avoid a larger conflict. "That's not acceptable, Counselor." The alien leader's scales darkened with frustration. "Then what would be acceptable, Captain?" Morrison looked around his bridge at the officers who had served with him for years. They had all sworn oaths to defend freedom and human dignity. How could they compromise those values now? "Self-determination," he said finally. "Any species that wants independence should have the right to choose their own government." "Impossible," General Morketh interjected from off-screen. "That would destroy the Empire completely." "Maybe it should be destroyed," Morrison replied quietly. The transmission fell silent as both sides considered the implications. Morrison was essentially demanding the end of the Zephyrian Empire as it had existed for 1,000 years. Counselor Vexran spoke with careful dignity. "Captain, you are asking us to voluntarily dissolve our civilization." I'm asking you to evolve it, Counselor. To find a way to maintain stability without oppression. Lieutenant Parker suddenly looked up from his station. Sir, I'm detecting multiple fold space signatures. Big ones. Morrison smiled for the first time in days. How many, Chris? 12 ships, sir. Earth Navy signatures. It's Admiral Chen with the Third Fleet. On the alien capital, emergency alarms began sounding as their sensors detected the new arrivals. 12 human warships materialized in the outer system, each one as large and threatening as the Defiance. Admiral Kekstar stared at his tactical display in despair. His entire fleet numbered barely 30 ships, and most of those were smaller than the human vessels. Counselor, Morrison said calmly, it appears the dynamics of our negotiation have changed. Vexran looked at the display showing 13 human warships now positioned throughout his star system. His Empire's technological superiority was gone forever. What are your terms, Captain? Morrison considered carefully. Earth had given him broad authority to negotiate, but the decisions he made here would affect billions of lives across dozens of worlds. Complete autonomy for any species that requests it. Protection for those that choose to remain with the Empire. And open trade between Earth and all parties. And if we refuse? Morrison's expression grew cold. Then we'll discuss the matter with each of your subject worlds individually. Dr. Velandra whispered something to the counselor, who nodded slowly. The scientist had clearly explained what 13 human warships could do to their civilization. We accept your terms, Captain Morrison. As the transmission ended, Morrison looked out at the stars where human and alien ships now shared the same space. The galaxy had changed forever, and there would be no going back. Lieutenant Rodriguez approached with a smile. Sir, we're receiving surrender signals from the Imperial fleet. It looks like the Empire really is trembling. Morrison nodded, but felt no joy in victory. They had prevented a war, but the real work of building peace would take generations.